Our question and answer phase for this endorsement process. And what we've done in the past that has worked very effectively, we're going to have people come to one side of the room or the other. We're going to start with this side. Francine Farmer is our secretary and a trustee of the club. She has a microphone, and if you will come up to her and line up with your questions, then she will hold it for you and you ask the question. And then if you're unable to make it, or if it's just more convenient, Francine will then go to the other side of the room and repeat the process until we're concluded. We do have 25 minutes allocated to this, and just to get things started, I know you're ready to go, but I'm going to ask the first question and we'll go from there. Now in answering, we're going to go in alphabetical order for the first question, and you can stay at the table at this point, and I'll just hand the mic down. I think that'll be easier. The first question has a couple of parts. One, have each of you read the report from the Task Force Finance Group? And do you agree that school levies should be stretched out more and not every 3 years? What role does the school board play in cutting the school budget if it needs to be cut? And in your view, what should be under consideration for cutting? Sure. Have you read the task force report? Do you agree that the levy should be stretched out more, not every 3 years? And what role does the board play in cutting the budget if it needs to be cut? And what are the areas under consideration that you think should be cut? One question.
And you said we have 25 minutes for the Q&A portion, right? Good evening again, everyone. By the way, there's my daughter in the back, our Boulevard Scout. So, the question at hand is yes, we should definitely work diligently to stretch our levy cycles. And I say that not only as a measure of ensuring we're putting the fiscal responsibility and making choices, but also as you look at a defined pie that our community has. We're going to hear later on from members of and those running for Shaker City Council. We're getting into a world where we are limited in the number of resources that we can ask our residents to provide. So stretching those cycles does require some discipline on our behalf, as well as looks at the totality of the pie and saying we're doing the right things. The school board, to the second part of the question, should set as the objective the need to make reductions. We should go as far as putting parameters around this is the maximum that our community could absorb by looking at the levy cycles being 4 or potentially longer years. As it relates to specific budget cuts, or what I'd like to say, optimizations, because it's not an and or. We have opportunities, and Ruben mentioned it, to potentially improve efficiencies. The state, we can ask the audit of a state audit to be performed of our school system to understand if there are additional efficiencies that we can obtain that maybe we don't see. So another set of eyes to come in, find opportunities for us, outline some choices, and I want to emphasize this word as much as possible tonight, choices that we as a community can make. That may range from things within the budget itself. It may range from coursework that we decide to accomplish in a different manner, maybe by partnering with a neighboring community, or in our internet age, maybe we're doing online training for advanced coursework with only a limited number of students. We might also look at the totality of the pie. We are sitting next door to a wonderful library system that Shaker prides. We might have an opportunity, as looking at our entire city pie and how those monies are being used, to work with the county more effectively for versus running our own system. So those are some potential ideas and how I look at my role as a board member in working through those tough choices.
Hello again. I think the first thing we need to do before we look at making cuts or deciding on cuts is establishing our true vision as what our schools should be. From curricula to staffing to course offerings, just what school system, if we had a blank sheet of paper, what would that school system look like? Not getting rid of anything that works effectively, but looking at the whole totality. We can also look at other school districts and learn from the best practices in other locations, not just in Ohio, but throughout the country. A cost-benefit analysis should be done for various programs to see if we're spending X dollars and impacting Y number of students, is that an effective use of those dollars? And that should be looked at all programs. When I was on the Finance and Audit Committee, we were able to make a 5-year cycle between the need for levies. But what we need to do is not focus on whether it's a 3 or 5 year cycle, but how much is the increase between those cycles and holding that to a minimum. The board definitely has a role in determining what our school district looks like. That's pretty much it. And I'll give it to you.
Yes, I read the task force report. Yes, I agree in principle that we need to stretch out levies. And in fact, we have worked hard to do that. We had the superintendent of the board guidance managed to find $2 million in savings against budget this year. Those are largely tweaks. People have noticed a slight increase in class sizes. With 80% of our budget going to salaries and benefits, you're basically talking, when you talk about significant savings, you're talking about how people's time is used and whether we employ as many people as we do. One of the key drivers of that at the high school and the middle school is schedule efficiency. How optimally can you schedule classes? And there has been progress made in schedule efficiency in the last 2 years that has allowed some positions to go unfilled. The reality is we have to be careful here because, and I don't know whether it's 5 years or 4 years, whether it's 9 mils or whatever it is, but the reality is that what we are paying for is the time of professionals who work with our children. And unlike a factory which can replace a worker with a robot or send the job to China, we need to continue to attract and retain those professionals. And our teachers union, we worked hard this year with them to kind of deal with the reality, and I think they did a great thing. They worked with us to come up with a fair contract which froze their wages for 3 years here, and shifted and increased by 50% the proportion of healthcare benefits that they're paying, to bring it closer to private sector norms. And that hurts. That hurts them. They've been with it. They get it. They get that we need to do these things. It's allowed us to avoid layoffs. And in fact, because we don't have to lay off, we don't lose those younger teachers who bring promise. There's a wonderful new teacher we hired at Woodbury who was recruited nationally by the Cleveland schools for the STEM school, and then they had to lay her off. And so we were able to pick her up, and that's not really fair to Cleveland, but good for us because we don't have this binge purge budget cycle. Because I think we stretched out the levy and we made the case to the community that we needed the money. I mean, the reality is that this is a community that 80% of our funding is local taxes, and the silver lining of that is when education is being torn to shreds all over the country, this community can make a choice to support good schools for our kids and to invest in our future. And I, as a board member, take very seriously that request for a levy, and I'm not going to do it unless I'm convinced that we've been able to stretch. So we're looking now. The schedule is 2013. We're trying to figure out how to get to 2014. Is it possible even to get to 2015? There's a lot of factors that affect that. but until we change the way we fund schools, we're not going to be able to stop needing to come back for levies. And then the thing I'd say is we continue to look under every rock, and you know, we've done the performance audits. We've had people come in and look at kind of how do we spend money. It's you know, one of the biggest areas, 25% of our budget is special education. And as the uncle of an autistic child, I strongly believe that every child should get the best options. The problem is we're so good at it in Shaker that we're a bit of a magnet for families. And we have no control over how many autistic kids, for example, we have who can cost the district $100,000. So one of the things that I'm very interested in doing is trying to regionalize identification services and maybe even figure out a way. I think legislation is required to pool the risk, if you will, of having to pay for the very expensive student need. Because the feds paid less than 25% of what they committed to doing years ago. So, you know, we continue to look for ways, but I can't tell you that I can sign on for 5 years today, or 6 years or 7 years. I sure would like to figure out how to get there, but not at the sacrifice of the quality of the schools that are why, you know, 90% of voters in surveys say they're here in Shaker, whether they use the schools or not.
One of the candidates, in his initial remarks, stated as a major goal that the system should try to achieve as soon as possible an excellent rating from the state instead of the effective rating it currently has. Of course, that candidate was you, Mr. Harrison, would be the first to answer. And my question stated in general is, do you agree that that should be a major goal of the system? Of course, everyone supports excellence in the schools, but perhaps that goal should be stated in a more nuanced way, rather than to say that whatever the state sets as its criteria should become criteria which we measure ourselves by. I would ask Mr. Harris what he would change about the way the school system does things in order to achieve that excellent rating. And I would ask the rest of you whether you agree and whether you favor a more nuanced approach toward this goal.
Our top performing students in Shaker, those in honors and AP, currently receive excellent educations and excellent outcomes. The state test is almost meaningless for them because they're automatic passes. So for that population, we're doing a fantastic job. We have 30% of our population are on free or reduced lunch. For that population, there's a significant underachievement. It's been shown in various schools that that population can be brought to effective or excellent status. There are a couple charter schools in Cleveland, ePrep and Citizens Academy. On the state test, their students outperform everyone in the entire state. So those are poverty kids, single parents, free or reduced lunch. So that population can be brought. That's a starting point. We don't want to end there, but we're not doing an effective job of reaching that population here in Shaker at this point. What I would do is not try to create the wheel, but see what others have done who are effectively addressing the issue and tailor it to our needs and our unique